was in what the fuck was that called? Split. The guy from Split that was like the creepy uncle. He played the basically. It was weird. I was wondering if they brought him in for that part. Like, did you see Split?
No. I
So,
don't think so. No, I didn't.
Okay, like Split's a controversial film for a few reasons, but the guy who plays the father in Brightburn is like a creepy uncle in Split.
Okay.
And he basically does. There's like a.
Did he just reprise the role or something?
Almost verbatim.
Oh wow.
And the shit that happens in the Split movie.
Is that the same universe?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure. Like,
so,
it may be a multiverse variation.
Did you notice at the end of Brightburn when at the newscast
we have the bad Justice League?
Yeah, the Bizarro Justice League.
Right.
I feel like it's an unintentional Bizarro world.
Well, it does. That's why I'm wondering if it's set up in the Glass universe.
Well, that would be really good.
Because if it is, that it would, or like a multiverse of the Glass universe, because that would kind of make sense as to why the father, like, he goes in the woods and does some fucked up shit, but it's because he's got this kid now who's like an evil fucking Clark Kent, and he's got to do this fucked up shit, whereas in the other film, it's horrible, and he's like basically the creepy uncle nobody wants, but then it basically is the catalyst to give one of the main characters the power to fight back. So it's a very poor film choice of like a line of plot in the I feel like when Shyamalan did that, it was before the whole Me Too shit.
Yeah.
So he probably wouldn't have done it now. But then it's like knowing that context of the character in Split, it seems like they're alluding to that in Brightburn in a way where it's like you want to hate the guy because of that, and when they're bringing it in, it's like, is this a weird callback to that film? But then when he basically gets his like comeuppance, sort of, it's a weird. Brightburn is a very interesting exploration of moral quandaries, because then it's like, should he have shot the kid? Because even at that point, he knows the kid's like superhuman or some shit. So are you going to tempt that fate? Is that a good decision? Obviously not.
Obviously not.
Well, so that's kind of where again
I think you raised the most interesting point about it, is that it's this unintentional commentary on abuse and neglect and this kind of behavior where it's essentially it's all the mom's willingness to look the other way, as you put it. And I think that's like actually critical to the entire development of all of these superheroes. Spider-Man had his Aunt May, and she was always like, his moral compass. And all of the X-Men are looking up to the Professor because
that's interesting with Spider-Man though.
Compass.
Because the whole reason Spider-Man evolved is because he originally had no moral compass.
Well, yeah.
And was all about making money over morality, and that's what got Uncle Ben killed.
Yep.
So I think that's like the whole exploration of that character, is that when you don't have a moral compass, it immediately comes back on you, and that's when forever he let Aunt May become his moral compass.
When Magneto stops listening to Charles, he unleashes the fury of the Fury, and like he unleashes the Fury, and Clark is always trying to save Lois, and she's always trying to get herself in trouble because she wants to get the upfront scoop. And who else? Well, Batman's just a sociopath, so he's just doing it for the thrills.
Yeah. Well, but in that case, Alfred often becomes his moral compass.
That's true. And
then in some later issues, like Nightwing, and Barbara Gordon,
until he has the falling out with Nightwing,
right? Which is, I mean, that's part of it, is his moral compass going awry, is why he has falling out. So this is a very, he employs. You have these characters that enlist other people to become their moral compasses because they have this extreme power and they know it. Same thing when you're talking about Clark. This is where Henry Cavill's like saying the only way he's interested in reprising the character is if they explore the character with an unbridled sense of power, which is the only really interesting place left to go with, which is why Brightburn, again, it's like full circle. That's why Brightburn's interesting, because it explores this aspect
I'd like
of
to
that
see
character.
a Superman mishap story where he drinks some kryptonite booze and gets drunk, like really drunk, and doesn't realize, how strong he is, or gets into some antics. I'd like to see that version of Superman, but it's not a Superman story. It's actually like a Clark Kent story. It has to take place in Smallville because everyone knows him there. It's one of those things, and they'll all keep the secret because nobody wants to actually deal with the media storm that would happen to Smallville if they opened up their mouth, and they don't want to be ostracized from their only community they've ever known because they've never left Smallville. But that's the story I want to see. I want to see some hijinks with his friends from high school who don't care that he's Superman. They say things like, "Hey, Clark, kick this thing over the, Farmer Gordon's barn or something like that." Kicks it over, and it takes out a, hog on the other side of the next farm. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that is...
That's not our Superman story, though. So
No, well, and I think it becomes... in the sense of knowing how superheroes' close, like, relatives and friends are used against him, it would be hard to believe that he had, like, 15 friends that knew his identity, and none of them got killed off or held hostage, and we never found out about him. I think that's kind of where that... we've seen too many Mary Jane get kidnapped, or Gwen Stacy get killed, or like Lois Lane, for that matter, get kidnapped. She's the object of too many kidnapping plots.
I think Smallville represents this kind of idyllic, small community in nowhere, Kansas, that doesn't even have internet. Where like the stoplight they have is on a timer, and they bought it in the 50s, and it had been used for 30 years already.
Yeah.
Like they still have rotary phones because they never got the message to update their local phone system to digital.
Well, and it's funny too, because then you think about what Smallville represents concerning representation.
It can't exist, obviously.
No, but I mean, in the sense of, like, if we're talking about 6 billion people, Smallville doesn't really represent anyone. 6 or 7 billion people.
No.
And in that,
maybe
when
1,500 people at most. Not even
right,
that.
yeah.
Maybe only 1,000 people.
So then when you have this alien coming from a distant galaxy that all of a sudden looks exactly like the people in Smallville, it creates this weird sense of, obviously you have to suspend disbelief, but then it's like, it makes, in modern times, when you look at the makeup of the world and you're like, okay, there's 1 billion people in China, there's 1 billion people in fucking India, why didn't Kal-El look like one of them? Like, why does he look like the dude, like Jonathan Kent in Smallville? Why do
Kryptonians look like they're from Kansas?
Well, some of them.
There's a black Kryptonian.
I mean, in Krypton, Zod, the entire Zod line is black.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that now he's Superman's uncle. Yeah. I mean, I think he's always been technically, but Superman is technically part black now. Which is, like, they're finally addressing this in the television series. Well, I mean, not intentionally, but they're definitely making it so that, like, his genetic line
is much more complicated.
Yeah, it's super complicated, because I think they even mix. It's like they take multiple parties and mix them to make the best outcome on that planet. And then their Doomsday is way better than the one in the DCEU. They actually explore how they create the Kryptonians create Doomsday, and they go through.
They send them to like a war planet.
No, they are doing a test. They're trying to. They found someone with a specific. I forget the dude's name, but he has a specific gene. I mean, it's the same gene in the comics that allows him to readjust his body structure into whatever he died from.
Yeah.
So it's like every time they kill him a different way, but then they bring him back to life.
I remember reading a comic like that years and years ago, and it was like, that's the thing that drove him insane.
Yeah.
Was the whole process.
Well, but then what they do in the fucking TV show is they bring his wife to see him after like test 400 and something,
Yeah.
and she like runs away screaming, and that's what drives him over. It's like this crucial moment where you see the humanity leave him, or I guess the Kryptonian, whatever.
Kryptonian.
Yeah,
That's a rough
Kryptonity.
Kryptonity.
You see it leave him, and he becomes Doomsday, but it gives him much more character
Well, it
insight.
strips him of the last thing holding him to his previous life. That's the last.
But you see it. You see it happen in a way that I don't really think you really ever get it from the like. They tell the story in the comics, but because you're introduced to Doomsday in a certain way, there's never a way to reintroduce Doomsday without having that initial shock of like, oh, this fucking thing came and just demolished what we have known as the most powerful being on our planet. And then he didn't even die from it, and they just had to send him off on a fucking asteroid. He wasn't even dead after that. I mean, obviously neither was Superman completely, but this is where when we were young, our initial introduction to Doomsday is just complete madness, insanity. But now as we're older and we get a better representation of the exploration of his past redone, it's like a much more interesting character, and the way that Krypton has done it, it's fucking dead on with the...
It took me a while, actually it took me years to realize that Krypton was not a cool place. It's like the most authoritarian, militaristic... I mean, they're driven by the pursuit of science and knowledge, but they're a grand socialist military. Like, if there ever was one, they just found the right sun, they would take over that solar system within a matter of days.
They're not good people.
No, they're like let's see, Clark's or Kal-El's parents are not the coolest people. Jor-El and his wife are just scientists, part of the machine, who felt that they were, who felt it like they were privileged enough to redirect the resources of Krypton so that they could have a child outside of the cloning pool, and then provided escape from the self-destroying planet. Like, that's like the most privileged expression of privilege.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I don't know if you've seen Krypton, but you're nailing on the things that they explore in the series.
No, I'm just talking about the comics that I've read, like when I was younger and as a young adult. Like, I remember reading this stuff, and it was kind of funny actually, because I was like excited. It's like, yeah, let's explore Krypton some more. I love these stories, and every time I would get done with the comic, it'd be like, man,
it's like, ooh, it makes you feel gross.
Yeah,
Krypton, and I think that's the best part about what they've done.
And every time every time a Kryptonian runs into Clark, they're like disgusted by him. He's like this. He's like not even Kryptonian in their eyes. He's just has some genetics. And
okay, so here's the okay. I'll set up Krypton, and it'll probably make you want to watch it in the sense of the way that they approach it is Adam Strange has traveled into the past to Krypton to make sure that Superman is born, because something's happened in the trajectory of history where Superman is like not going to be born. So you have his cape, and at the very beginning of the series, like, they introduce his cape and it starts deteriorating, kind of like Back to the Future.
Cool. Yeah.
And it's like the more the Kryptonian past strays away from what is possible, then the more the cape disappears. So that's kind of how they start the series. It's like we're in a timeline that could potentially end up with no Superman, and Adam Strange is there to try to fix it.
I feel like any time that there's some kind of meddling with the timeline of the previous events of the histories, it's like it's Dr. Manhattan.
Oh, which is great that it coincides with the Watchmen series coming out.
I think that every time, any time there's some kind of discontinuity, it's Dr. Manhattan meddling with shit that he doesn't understand completely. And I take that with a grain of salt, because that guy understands a lot, but he's only human. Well,
he's not,
but
but he doesn't care about what he was anymore.
Yeah.
And he's only it's like the first day of being in a newly evolved species, where you have no peer, but you can make your own peers from yourself. He's like a single-celled amoeba on a new planet Earth, looking
in
at
a new pool of mud.
In a new pool of mud, looking at everything as a resource, including humans. Humans are just another resource to produce outcomes now, because he feels as if he's a god, even though he's just another evolved species. And I think this is also why the character is super interesting.
I just want him to fix this shit and not let the lantern die. If they can do that, and like, I think that's what we're missing the most of right now is the Green Lantern and the Lantern Corps. I think that there's a maybe that's the whole point of it, is like, hey, this is, you guys complain about this shit, we'll just take it away and see what you think now. But I think that there was a lot of the stories like that involved the Lantern Corps were very interesting to me, because they were always, I never liked the whole military aspect, that they were like
a Marine Corps.
Yeah, I didn't like that part. And I really didn't like that part about the Ryan Reynolds movie. I thought that was just like, oh, guys, really? Come on.
I mean, but that's why Sinestro becomes interesting, because of that power structure.
I know.
Inherently, they make it so that power structure is corrupted and flawed.
But I also like that the cooperative nature of Green Lantern, because all of the lanterns at some point need each other.
Yeah.
They can't do it on their own, and they know that. That's the thing, is like, it's like the only, I mean, the Justice League, they admit that they need each other, kind of, because they all fight in tandem. Same thing with Avengers or any supergroup. But the Green Lanterns, they're like, guys, we need backup. Like, get some help. And I think that's a really important team lesson, is like, get help, ask for help.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to complain if you ask for help. And that's a good lesson to come out of comic books.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a different version of ask for help. It's more like, be empowered, achieve your innate super ability, and succeed. You know, and I like that too. But you can do that and ask for help.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Yeah, I think there's a happy medium, because I think part of what you're nailing on is like, you never see somebody call 911 in a Marvel film.
Yeah.
You know?
They just go kick some ass.
Exactly. Nobody ever calls fucking 911.
The police are blundering idiots in Marvel movies.
In the real world, for the most part.
Yeah, but
and that's kind of where, again, it's like...
They really are, like, Marvel. Like, I mean, those guys, they're like the stormtroopers of Marvel. Like, they couldn't hit the building if they were shooting at it. Like...
And again, I think that's smart of them to do, in the sense of, if you're creating this idea of a superhero, you're doing that to empower people, so you can't give this false sense of like the people in that world all of a sudden going to be calling police.
It's like in Brightburn, that kid just dispatches everyone. I mean, no one stands a chance. I mean, that's the reality. Like, if a human versus any meta-human, it's not even a contest. And in Marvel, it's, well, I guess if you're Batman, but he's not really human either. He's like crazy, and that's the reason the Joker always walks away, because he's the craziest.
Yeah.
Batman needs those gadgets to walk away from an explosion. The Joker just laughs it off. But that's a really serious superpower too. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think now. What is it?
What does that say about one's ability to shape their own reality? Like, someone's so crazy that, like, fire doesn't even hurt them. Falling off of a building doesn't even faze them. They're, like, because their reality supersedes everything else around them.
So, I think also in the comics now, there's always been 3 Jokers. They retconned it.
Oh, really?
So, it's Joe Chill was the original Joker's name, but there's always been 3 Jokers that have been...
active.
Yeah. And Batman just figured this out, as he was like, there's like a god chair or something that gives him all the information, and they haven't, now they're exploring the 3 Joker mythos, and that's like the main, I'm fairly positive that's the main thing that's happening with where Batman in the comics is going.
I bet it's gonna end up being some kind of like deck of cards thing. The Joker cards, or the aces, no, the spades, whatever. There's that one gang. They're like they have the ace and a king, queen, jack, and I think they have a joker. But it's like, it's one of those, and maybe they don't have a joker. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they evolve out of that. Maybe something like
but that would also tie into Ace Chemicals.
Yeah. Okay.
In the sense of that being like, if that was the hub of their operations or some shit originally, they could easily tie that in.
Yeah.
Which would make sense to it.
So there could be a whole variation of cards, and there could be some clowns, and then there could just be some straight up mobsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, I mean...
I like this idea a lot of different faces of the Joker just emerging, in different criminal organizations and taking over people, because the Joker as a construct is just pure insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, that's what Gotham was really good about doing. I don't know which one came first, because Gotham sort of combined all of the iterations of the Joker's stories into one trajectory, so that we have...
Oh, they're attempting a unified field theory.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically, because then what happens was the first... They don't ever call him the Joker until the very last episode when he's older. So the first one has a twin brother...
Yeah.
Who he drives to become
the Joker.
The second one.
Yeah.
And then there's... In the course of that, there's an imposter who wears the face of the original, but then the original was resurrected via either
some Hugo Strange
shit.
Oh man,
and got
Hugo
his face
Strange
back.
Is such a good character.
And then sewed his face back on, so that's where there's... I forget if there's two running around at once. I don't think they're...
You know the beauty of Batman's whole code of justice before vengeance, don't kill people, that kind of stuff. Like, the beauty of that is that his nemesises, his foes, they just go to Arkham and they eventually get released because the charges aren't really that deep. It was most of the time it's larceny. Sometimes it's theft of or damage to property in excess of some dollar amount. But restitution for all that's kind of reasonable in Gotham for some stupid reason, because they don't have good property coding or something. So it gets interesting. They have to go to Arkham because they decide that they're not violent or a physical threat, and if they were put into the general population they might get beat up, so they put them in the insane asylum because they're clearly crazy, but they can't keep them there forever because the system is going to keep pumping people in and out.
This happens.
It's a really
this happens because in the cartoon they watered down some of the characters. Yeah. So Victor Zsasz isn't even present in the animated series.
Yeah.
Because you can't water down a fucking serial killer.
No.
You can't. There's no way to make that character.
Well, they had that Reaper, but the Reaper was only killing bad guys. The one with the big blade.
That was in Mask of the Phantasm, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is Mask of the Phantasm.
That was like a full-on movie.
I know. That's what I mean. You have to explore it in a movie.
Yeah. So that's kind of... I don't even count Mask of the Phantasm as part of the animated series. I know it's part of that. It's created by the same people, but it's its own standalone thing that's darker than the whole series. Where they actually was there an actual time anybody got killed in the original series besides his parents? Where I don't even know if they explored his parents' death that much.
I'm pretty sure that you occasionally
we see his parents alive in the animated series more often than we allude to their deaths, and that's where I'm like, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're right. I'm trying to think. Is there even a time when somebody just burning car goes careening off of the bridge?
I don't think so.
Is there even a time when
nobody actually dies in that one, even down to fucking Mr. Freeze's wife? She's not actually dead.
Yeah, she's still just in cryo.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever actually kill anyone? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
I mean, the only time that I can think of the Joker actually dying is when Superman rips his heart out.
Right. I mean, they didn't even break back when Bane was on there. They didn't even do the broken Batman storyline.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let him break his back.
Yeah.
It was one of those things they actively would not allow it to happen on the show.
Huh.
So that's kind of where, I mean, and what ends up happening is we have that going on post Frank Miller
giving us a really dark Batman.
And Killing Joke happened already.
Killing Joke was really good.
So we have back and forth between, because then the Schumacher stuff in the movies where it goes full camp.
Well, I don't even wait. Schumacher.
And Clooney.
Oh, that's right, with the nipples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost forgot that one happened.
And fucking Chris O'Donnell.
That was Batman and Robin, and then the next one had Batgirl in it too, right?
Yeah.
So
Alicia Silverstone.
Clooney did 2, and then Alicia Silverstone joined the group for the second one.
They literally had a scene where they click their heels together and go bat skates.
Oh my god. You know what? I think I actually saw this movie, but I don't remember
fucking
this.
terrible. And it's like, it's so bad retrospectively, knowing what they tried to do with it. It's...
Wait,
it should
Tim
be
Burton did the first, the Michael
89,
Keaton.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So,
the second,
yeah.
Batman Returns.
I think Tim Burton's Batman pushes the camp as hard as it can possibly go, and anything beyond that really... Man, Val Kilmer did one too, right?
Mm-hmm. Which was absolutely horrible.
Well, I don't remember anything about that one. Who was the villain in that? God, was that the Riddler?
I think it was.
Well, Jim Carrey was the only reason I saw that movie then.
I remember, the one thing I remember is he had a chair in his office where he could slide down into the Batcave or some shit.
That seems like a terrible idea.
And it makes no sense, where you're like, what? Where is this in the, like, they just did shit.
You know, that's the kind of thing where somebody's just sitting in the chair and their legs hang out the wrong way and it somehow activates.
Exactly.
Like, all of a sudden their leg is like sitting up there by their face as they're sliding down a conduit into the Batcave.
They're like sitting there on the phone, like clicking their heels and accidentally fucking, whoa! Bruce Wayne doesn't click his heels.
Or like some drunk person just happens to play the passage on the keyboard on the piano, and it opens some shit up and like, fire pole? Oh yeah. Seriously, if I was in some like fancy pants fucking multi-wing mansion and I happened to open up a fucking secret bookshelf, you know, passage into something or reveal a fire pole, better fucking believe I'm taking that shit, because there's not many opportunities for that, and you know, movies have demonstrated that shit always leads to some technologically sophisticated and loaded out fucking layer.
Yeah,
it's worth it. It has to be
or a
worth
dungeon
it.
where someone's being held prisoner.
In which case, holy shit. Either way.
Yeah, because like, I don't know, Pennyworth was they had their pilot recently.
Oh really?
Yeah, and one of the thing it's set in I think the 50s.
Because he and what's Bruce's dad's name?
Thomas. Yeah, he's in there.
He and Thomas like fought crime together.
That's what they're setting up. So then in the first episode, somebody's got like those fake trap doors in their bookshelves. And that's where they're keeping Alfred's girlfriend prisoner or some shit. And she comes out of one of them, and it's totally like a callback to the secret doors, but it's like the Batcave doors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'll never forget the first. Oh, sorry, not the first. You know, the first time I saw like the original Batman from like the 30s or 40s or whatever it was was in black and white, and they're driving around in like a Mercury coupe.
Yeah.
And Batman barely has ears, and this cape is like a t-shirt that they tucked in around his neck, and it's pretty cheesy. The fight scenes were it was like punch, knock him out kind of choreography. It's, okay, you're gonna hit him once in the stomach, and then you're gonna knock him out. Like,
Yeah.
And back then they were just chasing after organized criminals. They weren't even. There was no Joker.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the Penguin was. He was a guy that wore a suit and was a crime boss.
Yeah.
He hadn't become Birdman yet.
I think superhero or super villains weren't even a thing for like almost a decade after Batman was created. Maybe
he was
like
just really hardcore detective back then. There were and he was fast. Like he could survey the crime scene in a matter of seconds and make the connections of where to go after that and how to proceed with his investigation. And there was always a lot of like fact finding. And now it's, I were to turn on my fucking computer surveillance system and listen for do a passive voice scan, and there they are. Let's go get them, guys. get on the transporter at the fucking watchtower and transport down to the surface of the Earth. Oh, they're in Shanghai. Oh, that only means it'll take us 12 extra seconds to break through both parts of the mantle with our transporter.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
It's out of hand. Batman doesn't need a fucking Gundam.
No. Well, he did like. Batman is almost arbitrary because of the technology that enables him at that point.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of who's the person executing there. Or because that's where the way Batman operates in comic books and on screen now, it's like possible for somebody to actually do that shit in the real world. It's not out of the realms of possibility.
It's not quite Tony Stark level of absurd.
Exactly, which is where even Tony Stark level is starting to become attainable.
Yeah,
it's not quite there, but probably like 10 years there's gonna be
an Iron Man suit.
Yeah, that's also fucking bulletproof. That has lightweight enough material to travel long distances for long enough time to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, it'll be able to reclaim energy from moving, and it'll be able to, store up energy and release it like the Black Panther suit.
Yeah, which again, that shit is like completely in line of things that are going to be possible technologically, but then it's just a matter of putting them together. Excuse me, in the sense of, okay, the idea would be why would somebody need a fucking Iron Man suit? And the only reason is if they're trying to dominate militarily at this point. Like, we're not using Iron Man suits to travel.
Yeah,
it's not realistic.
Even then, there are much better platforms, I think, than.
Oh God, yeah. It's a terrible idea for fucking travel.
You can't store enough energy to make that kind of delivery system, like, really meaningful, I don't think. Not until we have some breakthrough in energy generation and storage. Maybe if it's just real-time energy generation, but even then, like, who wants to carry around a freaking reactor?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only reason Iron Man works is because of the arc reactor.
Yeah.
And his first version emitted radiation and was going to kill him. And the second version did the same thing, and he had to create a freaking new goddamn element,
right? Which is also possible,
well,
and
sure.
That's in the realm of possibility at this point, in the sense of we're getting to a point where our science is being like, hey, now we can create fucking unobtainium, and now we have unobtainium powered fucking engines,
but we can only make the unobtainium last for like 12 years. We needed it to last for 20. Things like that. That's
right now, but again, it becomes a matter of then it's still why.
Yeah.
And these things become like, what is funny is a lot of the scenarios that we entertain for these things, when we actually like look at them in the real world, it's like, oh, this would be fucking stupid to even, this is like completely useless.
Yeah.
And in that,
well,
I think that's, it's weird that our technology is following these patterns and paths with no real understanding as to why it's doing it.
In the early days of the automobile, with doors and a cab and all that stuff, there were more electric options than gasoline options, because gasoline just wasn't really an option. And for the longest time, electric had all the money, and there were some nice electric cars. And they were considered women's cars, though, because they were quiet, but they were faster because the engines had more torque, and they were just cheaper to operate. Everything we already know about an electric car. So the Tesla really isn't a new thing. If we allow for the application of technology to evolve, and we get better production and better materials, it's not just one industry that benefits. All industries benefit from better materials, and so it's really the range factor that's always been the selling point of gas. Is you're gonna get long range. You can drive out in the middle of nowhere and back, whereas with an electric vehicle, you might just be able to get out there.
I mean, but why are there gas stations in the fucking middle of nowhere? Because people get stuck.
Yeah, because they want to. They want to go even further than the middle of nowhere.
And again, it's just like, so here's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is like, the locomotion powered, or the engine powered locomotive was created before tracks were laid.
Oh yeah.
So it was useless for like 50 years until the tracks were laid, and it's like
it was they were powering giant industrial machines with belts off these big wheels. They would power an entire warehouse of fans and looms and other machines off of one giant belt, and they would just engage the drive wheel of each machine at the local machine level with a lever.
But I mean in the sense of that's a use for the engine, but the automobile is useless without things to run it on.
That's the other thing is that by the time that the electric automobile had emerged, the infrastructure to charge them existed anywhere that you could get one, at least, and they would allow you to get pretty much everywhere you needed to go, because in a city you barely travel 40 miles in a day anyways, unless you're just being a courier. But so they had the infrastructure to charge them, and
they also didn't have stop signs and stoplights to fucking do the stop and go bullshit a lot of, like,
no, they just,
I don't think I'm pretty sure this is happening without them having to stop and go.
Yeah.
As much as we do.
Yeah.
Which is fucking crazy.
I try to imagine that driving culture, and I just have no idea.
India.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's like India.
Oh no! I mean, an early driving culture where it's all electric cars.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like not having like stop signs.
Oh
and
no,
shit.
no! That's India, parts of China. Like I can definitely imagine that swarming mass of automobiles, needle threading and scraping of shit.
It's fucking insane to be in too, where you're like, holy shit, this is some.
Are we gonna make it? Are we gonna make it? Right. Oh yeah, we made it.
And the people driving, it's like so second nature to them that they're not even fucking like. They're not looking at the things that you're worried about as a passenger, but they know that they're happening.
So when we were in
really
China,
crazy.
my dad and I sat at the very back of the bus, because we were like, that's like a good 6-8 feet behind the rear wheels.
Mm-hmm.
So we would swing around, get these big wide swings around the corners, and we would watch the bus thread the needle from the back of the bus. We got to watch the whole time. Things would like close in on us, or we would swing around. It's like, oh, are we gonna
bus drivers, man? Woo!
We started grading the bus drivers on a star system. 5-star is number one driver in heaven type stuff.
Yeah, when you're talking about threading the needle, some of them are like,
well.
Holy shit! These dudes are fucking magicians.
They would lose a star if they didn't have mirror symmetry, or if they had like a scrape, or if they had like 2 items that were like on the list, they would lose multiple stars. And then you could tell like the 1-star or no-star driver. The no-star drivers were the guys who were driving like flatbed trucks loaded with shit that obviously didn't care what they hit. But then there were like the 1-star and the 2-star drivers who were like, they clearly care because that thing doesn't have fresh scrapes all over it, but they still got a scraped up bus. This isn't, it's not a reflection on them personally, because I don't know these people. That says a lot to me about a business, if their bus is like fucked up.
I've been on a mega bus that's hit a parked object. And that's when I was like, okay, no more fucking mega bus.
Dude, mega buses, I liked it.
It was good for a while, but then they started being capitalist.
Yeah, well,
even more.
I think there's a limit to how much you can operate a bus at a loss before you have to start asking for a proper amount of money to operate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they would sell tickets and the buses wouldn't even show up.
Yeah, that's
like that happened to me multiple times.
That's
where
bullshit.
I thought I was getting a good deal and ended up having to fucking drive to Chicago, not California.
Driving to California.
Oh god!
Imagine that for Uber. I need an Uber to California from Indiana.
God, I Ubered from Chicago to Indiana or to Bloomington once. That was.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah.
I
had to convince the dude. He didn't even want to take it. Because it was,
I could only imagine the kind of like a backtrack somebody would have to go through in their mind. Be like, man, I really don't want to do this. They're already in my car. We're already on the highway.
No, I was like, I hadn't gotten there, and I was standing on the street in downtown Chicago at 2:30 in the morning, looking shady as fuck because we're in downtown Chicago at 2:30 in the morning.
Man,
there's nobody out but me.
They probably thought that you needed to ride to Bloomington normal.
That's exactly what he thought. That's exactly what he thought. And that's where I was like, because I was trying to explain to him what had happened, and I guess, you know, you don't realize that if you're in a place and you don't have a car, you can't just fucking catch a train or catch a bus because everything is shut down until the next day.
Oh yeah, Chicago isn't like New York where it's always alive and running.
Yeah, like shit. Fucking Jimmy John's closes like 8 p.m. in Chicago.
Wait, how do they stay? Like,
I don't know. I don't know, man. But that's where
they don't want that late night crowd money.
I guess not. I don't know who. I mean, it must
maybe
be just.
There is no late night crowd money for Jimmy John's.
Maybe not. I mean,
you know, every bar that I've ever been to in Chicago, my friend Carrie would always be like, "There's this bar that I'm checking out because it's got all this food." And go there, and there'd be some place that had like ribs, and that was their specialty. And then there was another one that was tacos, and not just like crunchy tacos, but like kind of fancy but miniature tacos. It was like they had the food truck inside the place, and I thought that was really cool because that meant no having to go stand outside at a food truck.
Yeah,
that was a good idea.
Yeah, good idea for
way to go, Chicago. It's a really good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's also definitely gonna be something that benefits in the winter.
Yeah. I like food trucks. I really do, but I think that, like, I don't know, maybe it's part of the part of being a truck, or part of the magic is that they're doing it in a truck, and if they were in a fixed location where they had to compete for parking with other establishments, it would change the dynamic. Because when you don't have to, when it's walk up to a place that's convenient, it's like right outside wherever you're at that point in time. I don't know, the only times I've really been around food trucks lately have been like, I've been in a car going somewhere else, and someone says, "Hey, there's a food truck," and then we stop and go back around to get a taco or something, and it might as well have just been a restaurant.
Well, I think part of it is you have to.
Maybe I don't understand the whole food truck dynamic. There's got to be something more to it.
Well, your smell is your advertisement, basically. So you have to have something that's good, and then on top of that, if your food is not quality, you're gonna go out of business really fast. You can't.
So maybe it's like a litmus test for a restaurant.
Basically, because part of it is with a food truck, if your food is not good, you're just gonna have to keep moving to find somebody who's gonna accept your shit, and then you're probably not gonna want to be in that area because it's not gonna be a good area. So it becomes this thing of like, you really have to have quality food to have a food truck that is sustainable. Otherwise, it just won't work. I think that's like I think it's easier to do bad bar food. Like, you go to Kilroy's, their food's shit. It's shit. It's not good, but because people are drunk and they serve alcohol, they don't care, so they can continue to do it. You can't do that with a food truck.
No, you can't. Somebody will get sick and then tell everyone, and the next thing you know, no one will get that, whatever it is. I don't want to say anything because I haven't actually eaten food truck food and gotten sick yet.
I haven't either. I've never gotten sick from food truck food. From street food, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, well, that's like a food cart. That's a different level of handling things.
Yeah, because that's where I'm like, street food smells fucking amazing, but goddamn, that will fuck you up. And man, I feel like I almost died from street meat.
Food cart is equal challenge, personal challenge as it is dare.
Yeah.
Like, you got to overcome the fear, and then you also have to, overcome the desire to evacuate your stomach later.
I mean, I don't know if there's any overcoming it, because I mean, it's like, so remember when we were in Arizona and got those fucking hot dogs?
Yeah.
Like, that was, I I got so horribly sick from that, but it wasn't a disgusting, like, that place was nice. I mean, it wasn't like gourmet,
No, it
but
was like King
it wasn't
Gyro's.
dirty at all.
No, it was
You
like
know,
it was
it
like
was a
King Gyro's.
nice place.
It was
A well kept establishment for what it was.
It's a fried food establishment. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
It reminded me of King Gyro's or of even Dairy Queen minus the ice cream.
Yeah.
Well, at least our Dairy Queen because they can fry things.
But that's where it was like.
Any place that has a fryer, that's what it smelled like to me. But it didn't smell rancid. I mean,
No.
I mean, I worked at a Rally's once, and man, there was something collecting on one end because it had this really distinct smell that I'll never forget. It's the smell of beef grease that sits out for too long. It's like, the only thing that's worse is like pork fat, like it's been sitting in the sun inside of a container getting hot.
Yeah, I think that it's
like the dark side of bacon.
Yeah. I don't. Man, when you leave fucking pig fat somewhere, it's really gross.
Yeah.
That's like one of those horrible things where you're like, you don't want to be impacted by it ever because it's a traumatic experience.
It's funny. I saw. I went to a butcher one time when they were carving up some big pieces of pig, and it didn't really faze me at all. It's like, oh, this thing's been cleaned, it's been washed. And I remember one time driving through like farm country, and my dad said, like, you smell that? And I said, no, what is that? It was, these horrible things, like, that's a pig farm. And I like couldn't get it out of my nose.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. It was the kind of thing that made me. I had this kind of like dissonance in my mind. It's like, wait a second, that smell produces bacon.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever?
I can
smelled
never.
Kentucky oysters. Yeah.
I imagine that's some kind of testicle.
Well, I think some people call those testicles.
Well, Rocky Mountain oysters are bull testicles.
Pig intestines.
Oh, so tripe.
Chitlins.
Yeah. Ooh.
Ooh.
Because Rocky Mountain oysters are bull testicles. I know that.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard other people call like bull testicles Kentucky oysters, but as far as I know, KYs are pig intestines, but it smells like a fucking pig farm when you clean them.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's Stephen Chow of Kung Fu Hustle fame, his wire work choreography team were a part of the Matrix. They made all that stuff, the wire work look good. He did this movie called God of Cookery, where it's about a guy who's like down on his luck and gets destroyed and has to study Shaolin kitchen foo.
Cooking on wire.
Yeah, something like that. And that's like, that's a big part of it, of that kind of. Anyways, totally lost what I was thinking about there for a second. Fucking Matrix.
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, pig intestines. That's right. We were talking about fucking pig intestines.
Oh.
So he's like, in the beginning of the movie, he's criticizing this woman's noodles, her Chinese street food noodles. And he's like, looks at the tripe, and he's like, it's still full of shit.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever been able to like fully get around like that concept. Mm-hmm. That like, this is a vessel that stores shit. Sausage is the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I know it's cleaned out, and it's like the small intestine usually gets used for sausage, right? Or is it the long one? I don't even know.
I don't know.
That makes me even more uncomfortable about sausage.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always I've loved it for whatever reason. I've even tried haggis.
Haggis.
It was good. Thought it was really good. And
Haggis is one of those like super multi-meat sausages, right?
I don't know if it's technically a sausage. I guess it would be. Yeah. Um, it tasted more like liver, like proper than like Italian sausage or anything like that. But yeah, I guess it's made in the method of sausage. Cause the one I had, it was I was like,
That's the stuff where they like stuff all of the organs
yeah,
inside the intestine, spice it up. Did they grind it up first?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it was great.
So it's like a pate sausage.
Yeah, it was definitely like pate.
You know, I bet if.
Cause then there was blood sausage in there too or some shit. But that's kind of it was I think whatever specialty I got, it was like blood sausage, haggis, and I think mutton. And it was like a triple tower thing.
That's actually kind of cool sounding.
Yeah, it was because I was, I'm like, okay, I'm
That
here.
sounds
I'm gonna
like a super meat sandwich.
try it all. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a sandwich. It was like just a tower of meat.
A tower of meat.
Yeah.
Oh, it's even better.
Yeah.
Well, that's fancy. No, that sounds really fancy, actually.
It was delicious.
Mutton's like a lamb, right?
Yeah.
Like a young lamb. Or not a young. That's just a cut of lamb. Or sheep. Something like that.
But, yeah. That's where I was like, okay. Scottish food. Fucking awesome.
What else did you have while you were there?
I think I had a lot of meat tower stuff.
All meat towers.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was like, I feel like another one was like, I think I had a straight up steak with chicken on top and then bacon.
Steak with chicken.
Which is where I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Yeah, it sounds great.
What kind of name? What did they name? Did it have a name?
Yeah. There was names. I can't. There was the one was named after the hotel, and it was like their specialty. I just can't think of the fucking name of the hotel off the top of my head. But it was like right outside it, or
yeah, you know
Edinburgh.
I can't remember the names of any of the hotels that I stayed at in China at all.
It was like a little one too, so it wasn't like a chain. But it was like a little hotel that also had a restaurant in it that had been around for a while.
They might have all been. They might have all followed the like a naming, like syntax structure, like city, hotel, and then the number. Like
yeah, it's something like that.
Like Beijing Hotel number 1 or Beijing Hotel number 2.
Yeah. I mean, but then what I always try to do is find shit like the restaurants that are
nearby.
Well, that have been around for the longest. So then one of the places I went to had been around since I think the early 1800s, and they had burgers, and it was fucking really good as far because they have the local meat and
yeah, the Scotland was cattle country.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that's where I was. I generally am trying to cut back on the meat consumption, but if I'm ever in a place like that where it's like, some sort of exotic meat, I'm not gonna fucking pass that shit up.
Yeah. You need to find a conference in Kobe, Japan.
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny because I was sitting there. I was in.
You need to find
eating
a way to
like
cover a kebab conference in Turkey.
Right. Man, yeah, Turkish food is fucking amazing. But it's weird what some people consider vegetarian because I was eating lamb and
like,
mostly vegetables in India, and somebody was like, "Oh, I see you're vegetarian," and I'm like, "What?" Like, there's lamb right there, bro. And he's eating the same shit. He's like, I'm a vegetarian too. And I'm like, what? You're eating lamb.
Maybe it was like it was like lost in translation to them. A vegetarian is somebody who also eats vegetables.
I mean, maybe just not cow. Maybe they consider, some people only consider if you don't eat cow vegetarian, but like if you eat lamb or chicken, it's cool. That's still vegetarian.
Chickens are totally vegetables.
Like, but that's kind of where again, I was like, oh, I'm breaking my vegetarian shit to eat this lamb, and then somebody's like, oh, you're vegetarian. I'm like, wait, what? Are we sure we're using the same word? But yeah, in the same way that I think that before people started doing, people had always been sort of doing vegan stuff, but before vegan culture became so big, vegetarian was conflated with all that stuff, and I think people...
Almost all of Chinese cuisine, just subtract the meat and you have a vegetable dish.
Right.
Like never
that
even...
still works.
Yeah, it still works.
Yeah.
You, like never add meat to the cooking process, and you have a stir-fried vegetable dish.
Mm-hmm.
That is...
You don't need meat.
No.
And like almost all of them. But again, it's that notion of protein.
I don't even think that milk was like a big deal. Like, really, even you don't need to. You can get by with like corn or beans. Somehow the Chinese managed to have entire like vegan culinary traditions.
Well, it's funny because then you look at...
And they're really complicated, too, because they'll, like, make some really fancy stuff.
I'm sure there's some, but there's, like, not a whole lot of tomato in Chinese cuisine.
Yeah, no, tomatoes from South America.
Which is where, again, it's like, to think of a whole entire cuisine that doesn't use tomatoes hardly, like, for anything... It's really crazy, but then they have so much...
But now they have tomatoes, and they've figured out how to integrate the tomato into Chinese cuisine, so...
Yeah. I mean, but I guess what I was getting at is to be able to have so much variety that works without tomato is fucking crazy.
That
like,
too, yeah.
Like...
it's like I've got... Every year that we've had this house, that I've had this house, my dad has planted this garden plot in the back, and every year these plants grow over the top of the cages that are already like 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall, practically 4 feet tall, and if you were to stand them up, they'd be like 7-8 feet tall, 7 or 8 foot tall tomato plants producing tomatoes. Like, right now they're producing every day. And it's incredible. I'm almost at a point where I'm tired of cucumbers for the year. And I don't even feel like I've eaten that many tomatoes yet. But I haven't gone out wandering around and eating tomatoes like I have in the past. And I think everyone can grow tomatoes.
We've grown some.
Like, takes 60 days, and you got like deliciousness every day.
It's really easy.
Yeah,
it's so easy.
Just gotta water it.
Yeah,
give it sunlight.
They grow themselves, basically.
Yeah. No, my dad, he'll make like spaghetti sauce and store it in a deep freezer. And I think he said that he's got like several bags left from last year still. And they're already in the process of making like the next batch of frozen tomato. It's like, I'm excited, but it feels like a machine now. It's like it's like being part of an industry of generating tomato sauce.
Well, we do basil and make pesto from it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it's like, the pesto from your own garden is just so much better.
Oh yeah. Well, just having fresh basil on demand. Basil will grow like a weed if you're not careful.
Oh yeah. No, it gets pretty crazy. But that's where it's like, it starts producing pretty much once a week in a way where that's kind of where, again, it's like, to be able to fucking package up that pesto and use it throughout the winter and as expensive as pesto is, and how cheap it is once you're growing your own basil.
Yeah.
When just buy the olive oil and.
Or just to have, basil.
Right.
on hand. I suppose you'd have to
basil salads are fucking good with mozzarella and tomato.
I used to get this ramen called Mama Din Din, tom yum flavored ramen, which is interesting because I don't think that I've ever had wheat noodles in tom yum soup ever, but it had the right flavor profile. And so what we used to do is we'd throw some basil in it because that kind of brought it all together. And it's one of those things in hindsight, I wish I hadn't eaten so much of that ramen, because in the flavor packet, it was like a chili packet, and then there was the soup base, and then there was a packet of palm oil enriched with some kind of seasoning. And some kind of seasoning part was great, but the palm oil part is not great, because I'm pretty sure that that's a complex fatty acid chain that we don't process. It just stores somewhere in our body. We never get rid of it type of fat.
Yeah, those are fucked.
And
because those definitely exist.
Those you have to get liposuctioned out to get rid of them, because we can't metabolize them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those man, I really wish I hadn't been consuming those from the time I was 13 until 35. It's a long fucking time to be consuming fucking palm oil. Where am I storing it? Hopefully I just passed it.
Right, I was gonna say hopefully, or your hair. Or
hey, I'm not gonna complain if it went to my hair, because if it's the reason that I still got a lot of hair,
right.
I'm actually really cool with that.
Oh shit.
That's funny.
So, thinking, let's see. I think, what is it? So, Phase 4 of the MCU, they've announced basically Avengers 5 is coming, and then so we have WandaVision, the WandaVision series, as they've basically said that we're going to start seeing her used powers that she's never used before, and then knowing that she's in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I'm wondering if they're going to do some sort of variation on House of M, where she's gone crazy and has brought Vision back and created an entire universe. Because that's not necessarily canon, so it would be an interesting side examination of this character to do it on screen and do their own storyline. And then in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, we might see a House of M reference, or even straight up House of M there. And I don't think they're going to do House of M in the WandaVision iteration, just because that it wouldn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with what House of M happened, with what happened in House of M. However, knowing that House of M happened, it makes complete sense that Wanda on screen, that we know, would go crazy and try to bring back Vision somehow, because they weren't together long enough to really have their own adventures when he was still alive. It was maybe what, I forget, maybe between the two films it was supposed to be 2 or 3 years.
3 years.
So that's where it's
that 3 years is long enough for a 2.5 hour long movie.
Right. Not
especially
9 episodes.
Yeah.
I don't think. I feel like 9 episodes would be really pushing that 3 years. But I don't know if it would also make sense to go back to that time period knowing that Loki is out about. That this is kind of where, again, I feel like what we're gonna see with Black Widow, and what they're not telling us is that we're gonna see her examine her history because she's in the Soul Stone. In the same way that they cut what's the name, Thanos's trial with the Living Tribunal, we may see Black Widow actually face the Living Tribunal in her trial for what the film is setting up. Because I feel like that character is so irrelevant if she stays dead. It makes no fucking
where's
sense.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
I think that's 2021. I feel like it got pushed back because it's going to tie in with the Thor Got Love and Thunder.
Okay.
So originally, I believe it was going to come out where Thor's going to now come out.
Ooh.
So it's slightly pushed back.
Fantastic Four, another Black Panther, another a Wasp movie.
I don't know if this one's real. I feel like this one's fake. Because I've read that they've announced a Fantastic Four, but I haven't actually seen any Marvel people saying it. Like Kevin Feige, I watched the Comic-Con thing, and I do not recall him saying the words Fantastic Four at all.
What about the Blade Resurrection?
That's fucking awesome.
I don't know if they're actually going to call it that. I was just going to say in terms of resurrecting the Blade movie franchise.
Yeah, that's definitely real. And that's fucking, what's the name?
Wesley Snipes reprising the role?
No, it's, I think it's Ali Masharala or some, he's a dude from, he was in Luke Cage and he played Cottonmouth. So... Mashallah Ali, I forget the dude's. I forgot how to say it. I just know him as Cottonmouth, but he's a good actor, and he'll definitely kill the role.
Kevin Feige, Mashallah Ali.
Yeah, Mashallah Ali.
Huh. You know, I'm really happy they're gonna bring Blade into this because I think he's one of the coolest anti-heroes. I think he's like,
oh yeah,
he's one of the most interesting characters because he has this, he's a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
oh shit. Oh, you made me think. I wonder, they haven't really gone explicit into why Doctor Strange's film is horror, but they might do the Marvel Zombies.
Oh, really?
That's possible. Like they haven't said it because I think what ends up happening is you can't ruin your shit by telling too much. So they use the like distraction and they say, oh, this is the big surprise, and then by the time it happens, then there's a whole actual big surprise that has to happen because.
Well, that's just diversionary. That's marketing.
Right.
Diversionary
Yeah.
marketing.
And they've been really good about that, even down to, when people were guessing the name of Endgame, they're like, oh no, it's not Endgame, and then when they released it, people were, oh my god, it's Endgame. They're losing. People still lost their fucking minds, even though they guessed the name of the film.
In my wildest imagination, we get to have a Wolverine Blade showdown,
which that's
supposed to be like the most brutal fight of fisticuffs in all of Marvel,
and that's how they earn their respect for each other.
Yeah.
And that might be something that we might actually get to see because, again, it's like, depending on which storylines they do, we might get introduced to Wolverine as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. We might get introduced to Wolverine as Weapon X, or fucking Alpha Flight. They still have not referenced Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight is there.
Yeah, without
it's an IP.
There's a really good opportunity to, Puck.
Well, it's not like Canadian fucking people wouldn't go support the movie. And on top of that, LGBT people, he's one of the first gay characters. They had one of the first gay characters ever, which they retconned in a fucking dream. because the times were so bad. So the fact that Alpha Flight exists in the Marvel universe and is, I feel like they're glossing over it on purpose to not draw attention to it because they're gonna use it. Like that may be the way, like to get out of the Fox properties. That might be the best way to bring fucking Logan into the MCU and not fuck with Fox's shit. And that's not X-Men. It's Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be lying if they're saying, "Oh no, you're not going to see X-Men, but you're going to see Alpha Flight." Yeah. And then people lose their minds because it's like
that's like a version of Logan that they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they could.
Well, and then they'd have an excuse for that fucking brown costume.
Yeah.
And we'd see like full on brown costume
because he and Puck would match.
Right. Yeah. No, man.
That was one of those things that I always thought was funny.
This is actually a really good way to get around all the IP stuff, because then it's like a whole new fucking iteration that has a completely different costume. Like that may be what we're like about to see happen.
Well, that would be good.
And,
that'd be really
I feel
good.
like the fact that we can come up with something like this and it sounds feasible in a way where you're like, the idea of like seeing Alpha Flight on the first time on screen and then not even knowing that fucking Logan's coming as an Alpha Flight member and what that's setting up, and then it's gonna set up the fucking Hulk battle. Like
I think anybody who's aware of the origins of Wolverine, if they saw Alpha Flight, they would know. Mm-hmm. And I think that if they saw that, they would expect the Hulk.
Right.
Like I think those are that whole like kind of story microcosm is pretty self-contained. I mean, Alpha Flight gets called in, they all jump out of a plane, and one by one they get their asses beat until it's just Logan and the Hulk.
Uh-huh. And then the last time they're like, send in fucking Weapon X.
Yeah.
He jumps out of the plane, and that's when
he jumps out of a plane, but he doesn't have a parachute. Like,
and that's like the end of the fucking film, and that's when we get Hulk versus Weapon X as the next. We get a whole Weapon X fucking.
And Weapon X starts, and it's just Logan like on the ground, like shaking off the tree that he just plowed through on the way down.
Yeah, man.
And then you hear this raging beast noise off in the distance, and then he just runs off into the woods naked, except for that helmet and the fucking belt.
Oh shit, man. Yeah.
And then they could send in like then they would send in the second team. They would send in like what was that guy's name? The Sentry. They would send in the Sentry, and they would that comes later. Stryker becomes that machine, that crazy robot machine that's like the Destroyer, but from X-Men universe. He's also very similar to Silver Samurai.
Mm-hmm. Who
we get that in the Logan.
I think he was. I forget if they alluded to him being who Ronan kills in game.
Huh.
In
the beginning when they go find him.
Yeah.
Well, that guy is.
But it's like
that would make
not like a powered version, obviously.
Well, yeah, he's obviously just like in the street with a sword, but that could very well be a Ronin versus Silver Samurai moment, which is actually really cool.
Which again,
that'd be a really like microscopic crossover.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed his character in that in the Wolverine movie. I actually really liked the Wolverine. I think that was a very good exploration of that character, and I didn't mind that they condensed like 3 different versions of Silver Samurai into one practically, to conveniently create this alternate Silver Samurai. I didn't mind. Maybe it was just 2 samurais they condensed into one. But anyways, and I didn't even mind that they had Lady Hydra appear and basically rewrite her as Viper.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really strange like crossover. Maybe it was the same person. Anyways,
I feel like we haven't gotten or it might be time that we have CGI capable of giving us a good Deathstrike on screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that one I feel like would have been super hard to pull off until just about now.
Well, you gotta have rotting flesh. Has to have rotting flesh. But it's got to be able to move like a person. So yeah, the motion capture would have just... Motion capture is so good. Yeah. I'm actually really looking forward to the Avatar lineup, whatever James Cameron's got ready, because I'm pretty sure that the moment that we see like real trailers for Avatar 2, that means all 2, 3, 4, and 5 are done. I'm pretty sure that that's like the way that works, because if he releases them, they've got to be able to come out one after another to really capitalize on that kind of momentum. Otherwise, he doesn't get the Marvel madness.
Right. No, that's very true. And they're just such big projects. Yeah, I can't imagine not doing at least 3 of them or 2 of them all at once.
I think that Avatar is his. It's his contribution to aspire to a universe as grand and big as a Ridley Scott universe. I think that he's like Avatar for the James Cameron pantheon is that kind of story, and it establishes a universe and a scope of humanity that's like, in a lot of ways it encompasses everything that we are now, and in a lot of ways explores this solid progression into the future. We're still imperialists. We're still colonizing places. So, and it's always to extract some resource from somebody else. And I think that's important that we tell those stories.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But he's doing it on an intergalactic scale. Or maybe it's just an intragalactic scale. Still a big scale.
Is that species supposed to be in our galaxy then?
I think so.
Huh. Yeah, because I haven't actually seen it.
You should watch Avatar. The exploration of of native species of this planet is really interesting. And there's some really strange remote telemetry control interface type stuff, like neural interface.
Yeah, whenever I worked at Best Buy, it would always be playing there, so I would see clips of it, and it would be like where it was going back and forth between the handicapped dude and the fucking Avatar thing.
I think that some of it is pretty hokey. Some of it's kind of like, okay, sure, fine. They've got to have their weird alien romance, but some of it's really good. Like, just fantastic. The art department for that movie is top notch, and the alien design, the creature design, they did a great job. And I'm pretty sure that they reused some like old Terminator or Aliens weaponry and ships, because that stuff was already designed, it looked like.
So is Zoe Saldana gonna be, that's her name, right?
I think so.
Is she gonna be in the top 5 grossing movies of all time?
That movie's number 2 right now.
And she's in number 1.
So it's only a matter of time.
That's what I'm saying. She's gonna probably be in all 5 of the top 5 grossing films of all time.
Because she's not that old. She's got time. She's got time too.
I mean, assuming they're not recasting her.
Yeah.
For Avatar.
I don't think they would recast her.
That's what I mean. Like, what else is gonna overtake those things? From here on.
Well, there's already one that overtook Avatar. What was it?
Endgame.
Yeah, Endgame.
That she was in it.
And she's in that.
That's what I'm saying. She's hacked the fucking Matrix, man. Somehow, Zoe Saldana's done it.
Are they gonna cast her in the Matrix expansion?
How would you not? At this point, you can't fucking not cast her in the Matrix expansion.
Let's see.
At this point in time.
What else is gonna? Is she in Star Wars yet? She's in Star Trek, right?
Oh, I think she's in Star Trek.
So I mean, she's already basically in all of the. She's already in all of the
She's
franchises.
in all of the fucking
Holy
franchises.
shit! Damn.
Yeah, she's done it, man.
She owns that shit.
Yeah, which is where you're like that. They're giving, like, glossing over this major. This is like a huge thing. Who else has done anything remotely close to being in that? Like, I guess Tom Holland now, because Spider-Man just crossed, but it's not.
But that's within a universe's continuity. That's
Right.
just like side moving from
Right.
one story to another within the same universe. I mean, that's like Ripley being reborn as a clone 400 years later to be experimented on. It's a different Ripley, but it's the same universe.
Yeah.
And arguably, Alien 4 was a comedy. I'm serious. No. Every time I watch it, I find myself laughing. And there are some times where I jump, but then I find myself laughing at myself for jumping because the way that the scare mechanisms in Alien 4 work, it's not like the first three at all. It's
Well, but the Ripley character is like
cynical as fuck.
and she makes jokes the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. Like, her character is definitely a comedic element.
Yeah.
Especially making
The
her
whole
super
movie,
powered.
they're all well. That was just fucking absurd. But super powered alien super powered Ripley, like. But yeah, that movie was a comedy.
Well,
and that's the standout. That's why it works for me as opposed to. I think that's actually the reason that things like Alien versus Predator 2 had so much more like comedy element.
Here's okay. I could see that, except it's only a comedy if you feel as if you're more evolved than humans, because Ripley still represents a threat to humanity as being more evolved. So she's actually scary.
She's not human at all.
And the more she loses touch with humans and becomes more likely to like mock their existence, the scarier she becomes. So I think you as an individual can see the comedy in it, but I don't think a lot of humans would still see the comedy in that character. I think they would still be threatened by her existence.
Oh, she's
in
completely
the same way
terrifying.
that like Magneto threatens people's existence.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it's like, I think if you're able to look at her character from a non-human perspective, it's definitely hilarious. But her willingness to joke in those situations makes her more terrifying to other people. Even down to like, that's pre-toxic masculinity discussion. So the idea of a fucking super powerful woman that's just kicking alien ass, that's threatening.
She took like a short barbell with what looked like 30 pounds of weights to the face.
Mm-hmm.
A couple times. It only gave her a bloody nose.
Yeah.
Which ate through the floor.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like, she was so tough.
Yeah. No, I revisited that series in the sense of then also revisiting the Predator and fucking Blade Runner series, knowing that they're all connected.
I think Alien is one of the best. That's one of the best sci-fi franchises.
Oh, most definitely. But they're all in the same in them all having the same universe. I feel like they're inextricable, but at the same time, it's like the whole story with all of them is what's really super interesting to me now, in the sense of the evolutionary tale that is the one seeded by the
Wayland Corp?
No, by the original the designers, like the engineers.
Oh yeah.
So they're like, their design is billions of years old. Humans are not part of their design.
Humans are
they hate humans.
accident.
Exactly. So then knowing that their design was not meant to produce humans, and we thought it was just because we're fucking self-centered.
Because we're arrogant.
Exactly. That's when the story to me becomes 1,000 times more interesting, because it was never meant to be viewed from a human point of view, but as humans we have no choice but to do that. So that's why Aliens was a horror film, or Alien, or that's
Prometheus.
why Prometheus was a horror film.
Yeah.
If you view it from the human perspective, but if you view it from an evolutionary perspective, there's no actual horror in it. It's just an
A really complex story.
I mean, but then it's like what's it called? You're analyzing these events. It's like completely scientific, even down to when they first encounter the fucking facehugger in Prometheus. It's not really scary. It's like, it's a stupid fucking human who does some dumbass shit that you can see coming. So there's no real horror in it.
No,
like,
the horror in that kind of scenario isn't that we can see it coming. It's that we don't know how gory it's going to be.
And that's gore. That's not horror.
Yeah.
And this is why I mean, when you take out the human perspective of these events, it's pure gore, and in that there's only, like, gore is nature.
Yeah.
Like, is watching a crocodile eat a gazelle horror? No, it's not horror film at all.
It's just something that is going to happen.
And I think that's why.
Well, that's one of those things that,
it, like, gets really interesting.
That's like when the xenomorph kills the band of Marines and aliens.
Mm-hmm.
When the xenomorphs do it, it's no more. It seems more violent than when the Avengers are going toe to toe with Thanos' horde. But it's not, because it's so dark that you really can't even see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like the noir aspect actually shields the viewer from the revelation of humans being beat up by a xenomorph, because they don't all get killed, and most of them in fact get hauled off to the facehugger egg room.
Oh yeah.
Like they're not even killing them, they're just incapacitating them.
Yeah.
And that, I think that might be the scariest part, is that there's this thing that you can't even see that incapacitates you. You can shoot your most advanced armaments at them, and you might kill a few of them, but it's actually worse for you if you get their bloods on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting exercise in fear, I think. It's scary. The idea is scarier than what they actually do initially.
Yep.
And that's where they get you. It isn't even until you see the facehugger, until they reveal it in Alien versus Predator, where they reveal the proboscis as it's like going for the gusto.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not until that final moment that you realize what's actually happening. Because they kind of explore it in Alien.
I think in 3.
Yeah.
In 3, it's like one of the more intense focus scenes where it, like, she's hiding or something and is trying to get her, and it uses that, which that was like the first time I think that they really focused on it. But again, this is where looking at that continuity between the different universes and saying, like, in this universe the xenomorph is a lot more.
Also, big ups to Ripley for time travel. I mean, forward time travel, it's still time travel. If you go to sleep and you wake up and it's 50 to 100 years later, I feel like that still qualifies as time travel.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so, big ups to Ripley for, like, time traveling.
and being cloned.
And being cloned, because that shit's rough.
Yeah, but these are all things that...
Continuity of the universe is really... Yeah, no, you're right. It's the thing that drives those stories further and allows them to not have to recycle or to not have to, reinvent every few years, because all they have to do is inject, hey, it's space, it takes a while to get anywhere, we're going to freeze your ass, you're going to wake up in 100 years, just so you know.
Well, and in that, so what I was trying to, like, get to in my own mind is the Blade Runner exploration of replicants leading up to David as the thing that we encounter on the ship. is such a crazy connection of these simultaneous things happening in their lore, which is why obviously Blade Runner on its own is cool, but to understand why the Davids are on the ships and there's different versions of the same David, and why the different replicants and different androids don't work out.
I don't think anyone really put together, even in Blade Runner or even with Alien. And maybe they did. I don't remember because I wasn't around when those movies were originally released. I couldn't have watched them.
Well, in 2049, there's an engineer.
Well, I know. What I mean is that there might have been people who were able to connect Wayland and Yutani Corp and Wayland Yutani and everything that exists in both of those, in both Blade Runner and in Aliens, and actually visually connect what's going on, because they both actually have references to the other. Yeah. Because of the early Ridley Scott connections.
I think people had guessed it, but it hadn't been confirmed until early 2000s or something. Yeah. So it was lore for a long time.
Well, that would make sense.
And then it was confirmed later, because
replicants are very similar to the.
It was only when they confirmed the connection with the alien predator that they confirmed the Blade Runner connection once they started doing the Alien vs. Predator series, because that's when they started confirming all of these things. Because it was there was a panel in one of the Predator series that showed an engineer on the tape, in one of the bodysuits or something. Yeah. And then somebody was like, "Wait, is this crossover with the fucking aliens?" And then they were like, "Yes." And then they did the Alien vs. Predator crossover, and that's when the crossover shit because I just recently watched a video that was explaining all of the connections, and there was one that had been laid in Predator 2, which was the trophy that was given.
The trophy wall.
But the actual gun that was given to Danny Glover's character was a gun from 715, but that was when one of the first Predators had come, and that pirate was one of the people who he worked with or something. So then that was written in the comic books to supplement it, but then that was also brought into the lore of the Predators have been coming here for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that part was pretty interesting. That's a good expansion of it. I always wanted the Predators to just be I like the exploration of technology that they've given us so far, because I always wanted them to be really, really sophisticated, not just crazy lizard snake monster things, still humanoid though, which is kind of weird, but whatever. But I always wanted them to have really advanced tech, and so I feel in Alien vs. Predator, when the ship fails and they show the one Predator sitting at his Emperor workstation, that workstation chair that I sent you the link to, they used one of those in that movie for the Predator's main chair, and I remember when I saw that room and the technology that they envisioned them having, it's thank you, I am very satisfied. I feel the entire Alien universe, they've done such a good job of creating a stable universe that people don't feel it's necessary to continually reinvent all the time. They just want to add to it.
Right.
And I think that's actually a hallmark of a very good story universe. I don't have to relearn history. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's necessary to create a retroactive story. They've killed the Black Widow. I mean, I know that there's more Black Widow story. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they couldn't explore those things until after they killed her character, which is kind of.
Which also makes me wonder why they're going to now explore this, and it really only makes sense if you're going to bring the character back.
Yeah.
And this is kind of if they brought back half the fucking population, and then also Gamora. So here's knowing that they're doing time travel, I'm wondering if they're going to get another Widow from the past that's going to end up in the future. somehow through all of these travels, because then, in the same way Gamora did, it's easy. I mean, not easy, but it's possible to bring a dead character back without having them be snapped back or something. That's just using the same MacGuffin.
Well, the gauntlet's not the only all-powerful glove.
Right. No, I mean, but you would want it to be something that's not just another variation on that. So it's not like
They haven't even used Adam Warlock yet. He's got to.
We don't even know if he survived.
He's got to challenge the tribunal and take the role of the living tribunal. That's what his character's role is eventually. I mean, they can't kill Thanos. Thanos is part of the Infinity Cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
He's
pretty sure
an Eternal.
I'm fairly positive there's confirmation he's coming back.
He's an Eternal. I mean, he's one of them. He's supposed to be a part of that whole cycle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he has to join the Infinity Watch.
Yeah. You know, I can only hope that we'll get a good Galactus story eventually.
Mm-hmm. Which that's what I'm wondering if they're setting up for Phase 5. Because I feel like once you do the Galactus story, you have to. I mean, it's pretty much done. Like what are you gonna do besides like that's bigger than Galactus?
Quasar. That's also a very limited story arc because it's kind of all encompassing. Well, then there's also like what are the Eon and Death and they could explore the Thanos death love.
I mean,
story
but they kind of ruined it.
Yeah,
they ruined it because that was the whole basis for the Infinity Gauntlet in the first place.
Yeah, the only one I can really think of that's interesting is Quasar.
Which, to bring Hela, I feel like they were going to do Hela as Death because it feels like
Hela should be Death.
A completely wasted entrance into the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
It was like, it felt like it was being set up for Death, and then it just was written out in a way that would have made, because my thought would have been,
I don't think Hela would be able to stand Thanos. I think she'd be really put off by him.
No. Think of this, in the sense of if Hela and Odin originally had the gauntlet and had destroyed Thanos' planet or brought it to near decimation and made him obsessed with that, and then she didn't like him, but he wanted to do that same thing to please her, then it would have actually set up the motivation.
Makes sense.
That would have made sense, and then she would have still rejected him, which would have still driven him even more crazy, which makes way more sense.
Yeah, actually.
You know, and that's kind of where it's like they had that possibility. They had it set up. And that's why I feel like they had it written and didn't go down that route for whatever reason, because it was all there. All that stuff, like if somebody was to go back and reanimate that for a new film, all of the lore would line up with what I just said and still work because of what Hela's character introduced about Odin. And that's why Thor fucking went crazy in that, because he couldn't deal with the fact that Odin used to be a destroyer.
And that makes perfect sense, actually.
And I feel like that would also have helped to contribute to Thor's descent into, like, not knowing what's right as to why he's not. You know, again, there's like a whole element that they could have done with that, and it would have made perfect sense with the comic books and the movies, and it would have made even more context that would have worked for what we got. And that's kind of, again, it's like, especially if even if she died at the end of Ragnarok, she doesn't even have to live through Ragnarok. The fact that she would have been
I don't think that she's dead.
Oh, I mean, I don't think she's dead either. But I mean, they took her out of the storyline.
Yeah. Well, it just means
she could have still been. Thanos could have thought she died, and that could have driven him even more. So again, there's all these things that they don't even have to change.
I mean, really, Serta just destroys the spaceship that Asgard is built on.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it really is. So they could just be floating around in space, because Thor was floating around in space and it didn't kill him.
That's true.
And I'm pretty sure that Serta just reemerges whenever the fires of whatever hatred and war are stoked. So we can totally have more Serta and Hela stories.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just need to. They just need to find them. Space is a big fucking place.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they wouldn't be able to land on a rock for a while. It might take them 10,000 years to floating around before they land on anything they can get off of.
Yeah.
Especially if all the resources of the ship of Asgard are destroyed. I consider Asgard to be a spaceship at this point, because
basically, yeah, it was basically like
a flat Earth.
A wandering Earth.
A wandering Earth, yeah. That was the first wandering Earth.
Yeah.
Asgard.
Pretty much.
I really liked Wandering Earth. I think that was a good. It was, you know what you're saying about how like. What is China doing? Like, is it a? I really think it's a peace offering. It's a way of being like, hey, we're not crazy. We want to work together.
Right.
And it's a way of attempting to appeal to a broader audience than people who are dialed into state media.
Mm-hmm. That's what it really feels like, and that's kind of where. If you watch it, you can't really help but have that thought or that line of thought where it just is so out of touch with what American media is telling you about what China's intentions are. And that's where I
think that if there is any group of people on Earth that are in a position from an organizational standpoint to actively change behavior on a wide scale, it's China.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who they have it like built into their social their societal grain, like, hey, if we're gonna do something, we'll all do it together, and we get it done faster that way. I don't think that it works anywhere else like that.
Yeah.
I think that's like the product of continuous revolution every couple hundred years, and having been conquered and then, like, you know, restored freedom and conquered again and restored freedom and revolution, and then, you know, all that kind of stuff.
And then not lost the history.
And not lose the history.
Yeah. That's very true.
Of course, now we're finding, like, ziggurats, 10,000 years and older, 15, 20,000-year-old ziggurats in places that shouldn't have ziggurats, like in the mountains and in parts of Africa, and like places where it's like, how come we didn't see this before? Like, well, Google Earth hadn't updated yet. And it always blows my mind when like discoveries are initiated through Google Earth searches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really insane that people who have like extra time to look around Google Earth can actually make use of that time on just looking around Google Earth.
And find shit that nobody else has ever like identified before. That's the weird part.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how true it is, but occasionally I read about somebody who is just scanning Google Earth, and they see something and they decide they don't want to tell anyone about it, but they hop on a plane and rent a car or get a guide and have them take them out there, and lo and behold, it's some, like, you know, geological discovery or it's archaeological discovery, and it's like, well, how did you know? It's like, well, I just looked for these signs, and then I noticed that this riverbed had these strange features, and they just stood out to me, and I knew. And then and it's like, how did this person find this shit? How come our academic institutions haven't found this stuff? Like, why aren't they hiring this person? Like,
I mean, that's where it's like, have you ever like gone and looked at the Sphinx on there?
Oh yeah,
it's like really cool that you can just go look at that shit.
Yeah.
You know? It's like
Google Earth.
Yeah.
What a fantastic project.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to be able to look at the world in 3 dimensions. Well, I guess it's like 2.5D.
Yeah, it's like an interpolated they kind of interpolate what's behind things to a point,
Yeah.
and they can create up to 270 degrees of image, or of it's that photosynthesis project that Microsoft spearheaded. Actually, is the reason that we can create images like that. It only takes 2 images, and you only have to have like 90 degrees or something like that, and then it'll create a 270 degree environment from that. That was actually a really good app, and they gave it away for free so that people would create 3-dimensional or 360-degree interactive environments. And I don't know how well it took off, but I remember seeing these like, shots taken from the center of a room in a museum. And you can tell that they just sat there and turned in a circle until they filled it all out. And then you can, zoom in and out of that stuff. And I always thought that was really cool. And then the the industrial camera equipment market grabbed a hold of technology and said, hey, we can just build a gimbal to hold a really serious camera and program it to be computer controlled so it gets perfect overlap.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, the software was no longer in the hands of the end user, and it was being championed by people who are willing to throw a lot of money at it. And now that software really isn't available in the same capacity. I think there's a Microsoft photo app that allows for that kind of image to be created, but I don't see that kind of stuff the same way anymore. The panoramic photos that you can like move your phone around and it kind of moves the picture for you, like I see that more often. So maybe the Panorama one. The Panorama one. It totally killed it.
I know it was definitely baked in for at least a couple of generations, but it might not have caught on.
Maybe it's one of those features that nobody knew about.
Yeah. I think that's what it was, is like nobody knew that you can do that, and like very few people were making actual use of it in a way that made it useful.
I always try to make really strange photos, like put something in front of the camera that doesn't move, and then move the camera around, and then you have this long band of glitched image. It just smears it across the frame. It's like, whoa, my camera's on drugs type of moment, where you're like, what the fuck is that? And then because it's trying to connect all this stuff together, it screws up information in the background, because computational photography isn't perfect.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's what they used for that scene in The Other Guys, where they string all the still images together in the same space, but it's over time.
Cool. Yeah.
That's like, it didn't really catch on in film. They use it ever so often, but it's like a good way. It's like instead of a moving montage, it's like a still montage.
Didn't what's his name? Nicolas Cage. He had a movie where they would stack the frames upon each other. God, what was it called? He had like see into the future. It was a Vegas act at first. God, I can't even remember what it was called. I haven't seen a Nicolas Cage movie in a while. I haven't seen that one in a while. Next.
You haven't seen it?
Yeah. It's not a very remarkable. It's like not a good Nick Cage movie. You know, there's some roles where he's like very well suited, and then there are others where it's like, not so much.
Raising Arizona.
Man, I liked him as a super nerd in those National Treasure movies, but I don't really like those movies because it's just like, yeah, let's celebrate our fucking country's imperialism. Great. And here's a giant repository of gold that was stolen by American generals during blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait.
Buried in a head that was taken from natives and destroyed their monuments.
It always seems so surreal. Like, I like the complexity of those stories. I just wish they could be... I think that's the reason I like science fiction, because I don't feel any connection to some random alien race that might actually be gone, like completely gone, and now it's just like archaeology. Like if there's a way to scan a planet and know that, oh yeah, there hasn't been any like industrial activity on this planet for 10,000 years, and they can know that based on like atmospheric conditions or composition. And then they go down and find some stuff. That's cool. But I don't know. I feel like we've got enough. There are enough ideas out there that we don't have to keep recycling stories. I'm kind of worried that we're at this point with our sci-fi movies, especially, where everything's starting to recycle.
Yeah.
Like, especially if we get. I feel like the whole reboot frenzy might be over. I feel like
it's definitely coming to an end, I think.
Yeah, I feel like we don't need more origin stories. We need more expansion of the story universe.
Well, that's what the Spider-Man reboot did really well. Is like they didn't do the origin again.
Yeah.
And just went straight into it.
Well, we had 2 freaking Spider-Man origins within like 20 years. I think that's enough. That's like more than enough. That's enough for like 50 years of movies.
Into the Spider-Verse was pretty good.
I really liked that.
Yeah.
It was a strange, the Spider-Pig edition.
Yeah.
The nod to The Simpsons. Like, that was great.
John Mulaney.
Yeah. I liked that the story was about the Kingpin. And I liked that the Kingpin was a really strong mafia dude, just a big mobster. He didn't really have superpowers other than being crazy and strong. But he was crazy smart. Like, not Joker crazy. Not, like, mad, maniacal. He seemed to have, like, most of a level head for the most part. Except for the eccentric wanting to open a portal to collapse universes so he could extract his wife and son from a different
universe. His rage is what was ultimately his power. And that when he like... It was almost Hulk-like rage, but it was like
very focused,
just to the border of him not being an actual mutant.
Yeah.
So his like he was big, but he was
powerful.
More powerful when he got mad.
Yeah.
And that's when he was like.
This is adrenaline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I think Kingpin's a great foil. Especially for Spider-Man, because he's just a really angry dude, big old angry dude, and who can actually give Spider-Man a run for his money, like with fisticuffs, and that's cool. That's a good foe.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had a lot of good foes. They're always like super powered, and then got to get the whole team of super-powered people to get over the villain's superpower, and then, we beat them.
Well, that's where Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin's really good.
Yeah.
In that universe, it's pretty, like...
It's a criminal organization story.
Everyone's evenly powered in that universe, which is where...
I really liked the Dr. Octopus character, Octavia or whatever it was. She seemed dirty, like not just like oh, she's a criminal, she's dirty, but like there's something like unsanitary about her character, especially because she's like a scientist, and there's something about her character that made me really just kind of like uneasy. That's good. No, I think it's really good when they can when an animated character can make you feel something like that. I think they did a great job. Although what was it? One of the film noir Spider-Man, you couldn't see it. He was in black and white, and he was like trying to understand Rubik's cube.
Yeah. I finally got it.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah, that was a good exploration of multiverse stories. Like, I think that's where we're gonna start getting a lot more multiverse stories, just period, not
Yeah.
just out of Marvel, but you can't really do time travel when you have multiverse stuff now. It's like,
Well, that was one of those things that I liked about Rick and Morty, is they said they didn't want to do time travel because it's too complex, whereas multiverse should just change universes, and then you basically have a clean slate. And I think that's partially true, because I think that Star Trek, the Kelvin timeline, is a good multiverse time travel scenario that works. I just wish that all those actors could figure their whatever it is out and get on board with Quentin Tarantino, because I feel like he's going to do really well. I don't think we're going to get a cheeseball, corny Star Trek movie at all. I think we're going to get a serious, like, we're going to get a version of Star Trek that we've never had before. Like, we're going to get to see a version of space that's as dark as it really is. And I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that, J.J. Abrams I feel like he's made a dated piece.
Yeah.
And that's not to slight him, but it's not going to hold up over time, I don't think, in that the tropes that are not direct callbacks to the originals are very dated.
Yeah.
And in that, this is where I feel like, okay, let me see how I say this. Tarantino.
My concern about the Kelvin timeline is that the Bridge of the Enterprise is way too fancy. It's way super fancy. It's unbelievably super fancy. And even with, like, Star Trek Discovery, like, the Discovery is still pretty fancy. And then by the end of it, the second season, they introduce the Enterprise, and they try to recreate the bridge like the original Enterprise, so they can continue on and lead up to the Star Trek universe that we know, the canon, and then also allow for Kelvin timeline to parallel exist. But it's all so fancy. Like, I know that they came up with these explanations. Like Pike said, "Oh, we can't have any more of this holographic interference, because that's how the Klingons were able to, or not the Klingons, because that's how the AI was able to fool everybody. So no more holographic communication. We got to be all through displays and physical control." And it's like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But then that sets back all of Star Trek's the perception of the technological sophistication of the Federation back quite a bit. And by limiting things to displays and screens like that, it's like, why would they intentionally, like, nerf their own technological development? And is it just to force the viewer to imagine this level of development? Because, I mean, I suppose that they couldn't have faked it in with TNG, but why do I have the same problem with Star Wars, with the whole prequel trilogy, is that they invent this level of technology that just didn't exist in episodes 4, 5, and 6. And they invented these new levels of Jedi powers that, sure, they started to emerge in the books, but the books all...
I mean, but that also coincides with regression.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think part of it is you have effectively the original trilogy is the height of the rebel, like the rebellion.
Oh, the resistance
so
is in full effect.
That's when the most infrastructure is going to have been torn down, and you're going to actually be closest to reset, because they've been tactically taking out strongholds and trying to rebuild, and rebels have to start from nothing. So in most cases, that's why they're like hanging out with fucking Ewoks and shit, and it's like, at this point, I think that is not necessarily out of line with what would happen in an actual war, where the middle of the war, the infrastructure is the worst.
Yeah.
And then,
But it's space.
I mean, but there's still strongholds.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it's like, the if the Empire has a stronghold and the rebels take it over, it's reset. Because the rebels are gonna try to wipe it from like having any Empire influence on it, and that's where it's like, if that's getting rid of all of the tech that was there, and then to make sure it's not being monitored, for whatever reason, like it's going to be a lot of restarts. I mean, that's just how fucking war happens.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's necessarily out of line with what happens in real life, where you go to Iraq, it was more technologically advanced in the 60s in some ways than it is now, but the war set it back. And it's like, yeah, that's what we see.
That's how it is in Kandahar.
Yeah, and that's kind of, or Syria.
Yeah.
So in that context, that's like one of the less egregious things I think about.
But even the Empire seemed to lose their own technology.
That's because that's why I was saying it's the height of the rebellion.
But
like the Empire has lost the most strong, because the rebels are going to take out their biggest threats first, which is why they go after Death Stars and shit like that. But they still have the Imperial destroyers.
They had all of those destroyers, and by that movie they had like lost that Superstar destroyer. They seem to have more technology at that point than, like, more ships at least.
But they concentrate it, and that's their biggest mistake, is they always centralize too much. Like, they always put their big shit in one big destroyer, one super fucking Star Destroyer or a Death Star. It's like, I think it's only recently in the later stuff that they start saying, okay, we'll build 2 Death Stars or 3 or some shit.
Yeah, I just think that it doesn't make sense in my mind that an empire would emerge like that and fail like that at the military end, especially.
I mean, isn't that natural though? It's the point of diminishing returns. It's like the same shit that happened in China.
Yeah.
It's literally the same shit that happened in China, where once the empire gets too big, then it starts to deteriorate. There's a limit. It can't go on forever. And once it hits that, that's why we're seeing these points, is because these are the points where it's hit its peak and it's starting to regress backwards. It's like nothing can go up forever.
Yeah.
It's just not the way this universe works. And in that's why I think, again, like, the stories have been retroactively connected in a way that still makes sense. Like, I don't feel like the technological regression is out of line with the story that they've told.
I don't think that Anakin's ship would deteriorate in quality between the end of episode 3 and the beginning of episode 4. 20 years. I don't think that spaceflight technology deteriorates that quickly, because it takes so long for things to get anywhere, even with hyperspace travel. I mean,
but a lot has happened in those 20 years.
That's true.
That's a huge 20-year gap. That's like...
But I don't think that they would lose...
But it's not... It's also about being put in a place, too.
Yeah.
He's being ranked. Like, fucking Palpatine's ship is like...
I feel like once you get to a point of interstellar travel, I feel like it's, like levels, like the Kardashev scale, like at a certain point, like, you don't regress really, you just lose the ability to produce something. I guess maybe I don't fully understand the complexities of the Star Wars universe, because to me I feel like that one galaxy should be sufficiently large enough that once you have interstellar travel down, where you can get from one side of the galaxy to the other in a matter of a couple months or whatever at the most, like, once you're at that level, I mean, it's like you were saying, like, we're not going to see aliens because they don't need us for anything. They'll just go pull the energy out of the star, some other planet that doesn't have anything on it. Like, I feel like once you're at that level, then it's just a matter of, where are the resources? Because we have the tools. We can turn it into these other things.
Well, and I think that's what we're assuming happens between episodes. Yeah. Like, that's what's happening between episodes. All that normal shit that happens once you reach those scales, nothing is disrupted, so there's no reason to be monitoring them. So it's only when they have something that impacts that cycle is when we get interested in their story. So it's these rebel factions popping up.
Yeah.
And the revolt. That's what we're honing in on, is like, effectively, which is also why we're going to get stories that take place in other parts of the galaxy. Eventually, we're still just focused on the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Which is why I think a lot of people are over it, but understanding that once we get out of the Skywalker saga, we're going to hear about all the other shit that was happening with the other Jedi.
I just want more Solo. Give me another Solo heist movie. That was good. That was like the best addition to Star Wars in a long time, and that's like pretty easy to do at this point.
So I happened to watch a video about there was some Jedi that had a lightsaber that had one hilt but two blades, and the reason that it was a Sith design, and every time he used it, the blade would be different lengths.
Oh wow!
So that was like part of the
design.
Yeah, so it also threw off his opponents. So it's like, in that, what they were saying is the connection to the Force is what controls the length of the blade
and the shape and all that stuff.
In addition to the kind of crystal that's being used.
So that explains Kylo Ren's weird ass 3-tipped lightsaber.
Well, yeah, the useless hilt. Which really has no,
Yeah. I want my sword to have a hilt.
Somebody thought about that for like 2 seconds and then didn't realize like
the mistake that they made, the grievous error of their decision.
And they're just like, okay, we'll just let it go.
Oh man.
The useless hilt. That would effectively become the breaking point. If you actually try to use it. But
Poor
yeah.
Kylo. He's just the butt of jokes. I remember one of my friends, his wife told me how when they went to see The Force Awakens, their kid was like, I'm Kylo Ren. And they saw the movie and she asked him if he was still Kylo Ren. He's like, no. And I thought that was pretty amusing. Like they created a character that was so like foul that little kids like that are excited about him are like not excited about him. Oh.
Yeah. It's a really hard character to like. For so many reasons.
I just finished watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and as cartoons go, it's American anime, and it's a children's story for the first season and a half, but towards the end of the second season, it starts to become a much more serious drama, and by the end of the third season, it's like full on hardcore anime, because the final battle, it's like 4 episodes worth of Avatar airbending and all that good stuff. There are Dragon Ball Z levels of planetary destruction and tentacle weaponized elemental force that's like shaped like tentacles. Like they explore tentacle anime pretty heavily at that point. And then there's some orbs, and it's really incredible. It's one of the coolest fight scenes. It's like 30 minutes of fight scene between a comet supercharged firebender and the Avatar. So he's finally getting to use everything. And Oh, it's fantastic. And I really want to emphasize like Dragon Ball Z level planetary destruction, like giant pillars of stone being destroyed and people flying through stuff and energy being coalesced in one's hand and released later. And then not to mention all the animation was done with martial arts experts. The fight choreography was based off of actual like forms.
Nice.
So there's a lot of very traditional Chinese kung fu all throughout.
That makes sense, yeah, because the video games are really
Kung fu
accurate.
heavy.
Yeah.
No, they're different. The different bending styles are formed from a multitude of traditional martial arts styles. So they all have a little bit of each other. It looks like to me. They all look on some really strange level. They all look like Tai Chi to me. But then there are also like these extra special expressions of each type of bending where they explore a very old or very specific kung fu form. And that sounds pretty cool. So they did a really good job. It's one of those things that every so often I'll get the desire to watch because I need to be reminded what it feels like to be human. It's a good story for that.
Yeah.
It's about a week of just having it on in the background.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Super, that series I thought was pretty good about stepping up the scale of the destruction.
Well, they've got to, right?
Right, yeah. The battle of the universes.
Yeah.
Fucking.
God.
That last sequence was one of the more epic of all epics.
God. So fully powered Goku versus One Punch Man.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, they would destroy a planet.
Oh, easy.
Pretty easily, like pretty quickly.
Yeah. See, I'm not sure.
What's his name? Saitama.
Yeah. See, I'm not sure.
Can he live outside of an atmosphere?
Yeah, he's gone to the moon and back.
Okay.
I think in one breath, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean
he held his breath. If I remember, he held his breath while he was there because it happened in the manga, but also in the series.
Yeah.
I think one of the
I saw this really good
guys knocked him to the moon.
This video somebody made of Saitama versus Hulk, and they're like punching each other all over the place, and they give the fight to Saitama because he's supposed to be unbeatable. And I just the whole time I'm watching, it's like just waiting for the Hulk to like knock him into space, or to get knocked into space, or just to break the planet or something dumb. Because I feel like he's like an unnecessary type of comic book character creation. Because we've had generations of like completely overpowered characters, and after a while, like I'm not really sure what's interesting about that.
Well, that's why he's interesting.
Because he is that.
Because he's bored.
Oh, I haven't watched enough of it to get to that part.
Yeah, no, his boredom is why this show is interesting, because he'll spend like the entire fight pondering over like somebody who took took the crispy fry, and he's like thinking about his laundry or some shit, and it's like
I remember watching
like
an episode
the
where all it was him exercising.
Mm-hmm.
The whole day he was just exercising and complaining about it.
Yeah, it's like it's not meant to be an action show. It's like it's complete satire of action shows, which is why it's hilarious. Like in that character, like it's satirizing the overpowered character.
Maybe I should watch more of it then.
Yeah, it's really funny.
It's like there are parts of it that like I definitely enjoyed. It's just like
how much of it did you watch?
I watched like 2 episodes.
Oh yeah, no, there's like the first season, and then there's an addendum, which is like 6 special episodes, and then there's the second season.
Okay.
So there's like at least I think there's about 30 episodes total.
See, like I didn't put it together that it was like that it's essentially Brooklyn Nine-Nine is to any serious cop
Right,
show.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
Punch Man is to the superhero
Yeah.
pantheon. Okay, now I see. Well, that makes a lot more sense.
And they're like coming out with a video game where it's like you see the previews and he's just, he's not fighting back, he's just getting hit, and it's like it's exactly like the TV show.
So the goal is to choose witty dialogue to get through
I
the
mean,
fight.
it's a fighting game, but I'm assuming you can only punch once with him if you choose him. Otherwise, it's like.
Otherwise, he blows the place up. Yeah, I think if that's where we're at with superheroes, I mean, that means that we're at the end of the story.
I mean, he's old character.
No, I know, but
Like-
if that's where we're at with where this character has risen to cultural awareness levels or is popular on a wide scale, that means we've hit a wall of stories. They're just recycling with different characters or different locations or different costumes, and
that's why we're
getting this now, because we're at a state where that's all we're getting, and the satire.
Yep.
I think that's part of the reason that we didn't get a new Ghost in the Shell story, and we got a Ghost in the Shell movie, which was kind of like a redo of Ghost in the Shell, and it just had ScarJo, and
no real.
And then they decided to give her an origin instead of doing. They didn't have to do an origin story. They didn't. That happens years later during the series. They do the origin story. And then they screwed that one up too, and everything was already drawn out for them. They all had to do was tell us a good detective story.
Yeah.
I was so mad about Ghost in the Shell, and I was so confused by anytime I read anyone saying that they thought that it was all right or that they liked it, and all I could think was they must not have actually watched or read this stuff and paid attention, because sure, if it's examined on its own, completely standalone,
if it's a film that you don't call Ghost in the Shell,
it would have been fine.
Yeah, it'd be great.
But they called it something and it wasn't that.
Right, yeah.
It's like if we
name it anything but Ghost in the Shell. 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But
if they'd have called it powerful Japanese cyborg lady, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Even the part about her not even being Japanese, I would have been cool with that.
Yeah.
If they'd have called it Cyborg Lady Coming At Ya, that would have been awesome. Her name is actually Coming At Ya. That'd be great.
Man.